Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. And I'm your host, Janet Karen Lessin, with Karen Christine Patrick. And today we are bringing you an episode of Planetary SOULutions. We're talking about the elephant in the room and the basic income. The Republican Party has thrown all its political eggs into one gift basket to the elite class just in time for Christmas. The immediate effect of the bill, it's coming up on Tuesday, I guess they're signing it, is to significantly cut taxes for the rich, wipe out deductions for the middle class, and then raise the deficit, which will be the impetus to further reduce benefits to the lower class. What is the philosophical rationale behind why this is being done other than greed? What is the technological unemployment, and how does it affect the economic cycle, which stalls out to a jobless recovery? What is a basic income, and what is exactly the right remedy at this time? So over on aquarianradio.com, I have a page set up for today's show, and please do journey over there and look at it. And there's a lot of kind of graphic images to describe a little bit. An image says 1,000 words. But we're going to turn the mic over to Karen Christine Patrick, who has been researching this topic. And I've actually had a couple downloads from the extraterrestrials, so to speak, about a basic minimum needs economy. But Karen has some new research and insights. So, yep, I got your mic on. Take it away, Karen Christine Patrick.
Oh, thank you, Janet. I'm excited to talk about this topic. I've been researching economic stuff. Well, I don't know how long I'd say I would be doing that, because I'm, as I said before, second-generation conspiracy theorist. So in my home growing up, I was hearing about things like the Federal Reserve and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderbergers and all those kind of esoteric money magic topics that basically was pretty obscure. I mean, I knew not to mention those at school, but as I've gotten older, and then we've had an interest in that by a lot of people wondering what is going on with the money system as far as like creating wealth inequality. And I don't know if everyone's got a beat on it or not, except that
as I've gotten older, and then we've had a
I got
hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Hearing
there we go.
myself.
I got it.
It's not like I don't love the sound of my own voice. I just want to hear echo. Great. No.
Yeah.
I've been accused
go
of
ahead.
that. But what I kind of said is they've talked about our monetary system, or especially our global monetary system, as being Babylonian money magic. So as you study like what money is, it's and you go back and you look at the esoteric beliefs of the people who create it, by the way. So it's not just, I believe that thing. It's the people who practice richcraft, that's what I call it. Richcraft.
Wow.
Yes, richcraft.
Good term.
And so that's their belief system, and then they've managed to convince us of their belief system for people in the United States, kind of an invasion of that. So like if you're talking about America before the United States, I'm part Cherokee, so people lived in tribal communities, and there was trade and whatnot, but it was kind of not monetary based. It was like, I'll trade you this sheep, whatever it is, for some beads and blankets and shells and firewood and whatever. It's kind of like a barter system.
Right.
And that was, how human, tribal, indigenous communities kind of did that for a really long time. It got a little weird when they traded, a cow for a daughter to be married, but I'm not nostalgic. Let's just put it this way. Then we had this money thing move in historically kind of rapidly, and the banking system, in terms of the long haul look at history, is relatively new, although there was different things in the Roman era in particular in Europe. But now it's, gone all the way to now, which is an interesting period of time because we're in the digital age. Most of us use a debit card or something like that. We don't actually carry cash very often. So it's very, very accelerated technology, although the basis of the technology, and I'm a technology person, so I say this, is the basis of the idea of money as a limiting factor, as counting things that are scarce, right? You don't count things that are abundant. You don't count air molecules, not yet, what you breathe, but you do count what you drink because, you pay a water bill every month, and you pay even more if you get bottled water. So we are now moving into the super basics of life being monetized, and it is actually a technology that's falling behind, I think, where humanity is going, and that's where we have the trauma going on about the monetary system right now. And it's a clash of perspectives. It's a clash of values. And I don't know. When you talk about downloads, my downloads say we're actually going to transition out of it. It's really hard to believe. But by just telling me that, they made me notice things that are happening where the changes are coming. But I wanted to talk about a basic income, and I'll go ahead and let you have a say, Janet, on that, what I said before here. So,
I just wanted to know, one of the things that I've kind of realized lately is you can't see the box from inside the box. So if you go to a higher perspective, looking outside the box, you may see how to get out of the box. And so we're in this box. It's a box of belief systems. It's multi-generational. It's based on, I guess you could call it the fake news, but one person's fake news is the other person's real news and vice versa. So it's all perception and interpretation. But from this perspective, which I pull to the what if I was an alien from another planet perspective, which people are very well aware of that. I probably am. And I go, how do we get out of this mess? The extraterrestrials that I've encountered through working with other people that are contactees and experiencers and people that are in the secret space program or they work with the secret space program and breakaway civilizations, their perspective is, what do we do with this stuff called money? Now, I got to experience a moneyless society for a little while there when I worked for the military on Johnson Atoll, and we really didn't need to use money at all. Many people who would work on Johnson Atoll for 5 to 10 years would come out of there millionaires because they didn't have to use any of their money. There was no money required for food or anything, and there was nothing to buy, so nothing you could do but hoard it. So that was just one observation. I'm very excited what you're going to bring here today. I know there's a lot of solutions for this problem. So then, take it away and talk a little bit more, and I'll make notes if I have questions, and then I'll interrupt you. Let me get my notebook. Here we go.
Okay.
Take it away.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Okay, so I have to stick again, you and I being experiencers, and I think one of the reasons why the UFO alien question is under wraps so much is because it's comparative anthropology of how they treat their society versus how we treat ours. And one of the funny downloads I got was in a conversation with a being was, I was talking about money, and at the time I was really in a tight situation, kind of going, how am I supposed to do my mission if I can't even buy food, And I was talking about money, because that was what was on my mind, and they just said, oh, money, how quaint. Which I thought was funny, like,
right.
Oh my gosh, we're a cute little, Victorian era, whatever, from history,
Right.
Well, that's right, you guys use that. Oh yeah, So I mean, that was that perspective, and so it really is, from that moment on, I said this before, I did a lot of automatic writing, and starting in 2009 to 2013. And this is what they laid out for me. They had me write on valuation. What are your values? Provision, which is what do you need? They gave me some different terminologies, and I didn't completely understand things until we got to this stage of the game, let's say a couple of years ago, when we started to have, I suppose we've always had the squeeze, but the squeeze on all of us, the wealth inequality issues and all that really kicked in 2008, of course, was a big marker of when things got squeezier. My own experience was at the time I had a job I liked at the hours that I needed because I was still advocacy caregiver in my family. I had a wonderful part-time job I was really happy with. And then October 2008, we had the financial meltdown that it was very complex, and I won't go into it. But I was stacking books and magazines in stores, and then one of the first things that goes is a discretionary spending. So people's reading habits went from physical magazines to online, and my job in hours and effort plummeted to a level of part-time it really wasn't even sustainable to go, for the gas money and everything. So I just had to give up one of the jobs I really enjoyed. But it was like, okay, so now what, So I was one of those people kind of caught by that as far as employment issues and had a lot of struggles, and I've been having a lot of struggles for the last couple of years, like so many people are. And this has been interesting because now we're asking, why is this? Because people are like, why is our government saying, like just Trump the other day, there's this tax plan is going to just be great, and the stock market's great, and there's plenty of jobs everywhere, and it's like a surreal, Alice in Wonderland nightmare-ish thing that we're dealing with. It's like, what are they talking about? Because the average person is either seeing a reduction in their hours, cutback of benefits, a reduction in their pay, or if they do have a job, they're doing the job of two people now because they let one person go and dump that work onto them. Then, one thing breathing down our necks is technological unemployment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So there's a lot of factors here, but I'm going to boil it down. I do want to say one thing real quick is that as I kind of entered this phase in my research, I'll say up front, I'm an advocate for the basic income, which is like saying you're from Planet Venus. It's pretty new to a lot of people, and I went ahead and gave myself a job. I live in New Mexico. I just relocated to New Mexico. I am the basic income New Mexico lady. So I am informing my fellow New Mexican people about the what's possible with the basic income. And even though there's Basic Income America, and I definitely recommended first stop shop to go is basicincome.org. That's the first place you could go if you're interested in this topic. There is municipal and state and countrywide and international levels to this getting the word out about the basic income. But I definitely believe in, think globally and work locally. So I'm at least working at the state level and possibly the municipal level to try to at least give some awareness, to the topic.
Can you tell us and our listeners what is a basic income? What is this whole concept? Why would somebody want it?
Well, it's not a new concept at all, and it's interesting because the beginning of the United States of America, we were already in shifts of how do we live, and each time we shifted, let's say, up in technology. So we've been having, if you think of technology as like, you went from a good marker is that you had to card your own. If you had cotton, you had to hand pull all the seeds out and make cotton thread and spin it and all that stuff. So roughly at the time, at the beginning of the country, we started having technology, the printing press, all kinds of things that were coming on board to give America started on a technology revolution already of the type where they were just beginning to do things by machines that had been done by hand. And it was transformative, and also the whole history of America is technology upgrade to the point where we were the technology leaders after World War II, and we got some good competition now, but as a result,
right.
Okay, so people tend to live like they like to have. I do this thing, I make my money, I feed my family, I buy my bread, I pay for my bills, right? They like to have a stability in how they do things to make that happen. And so coming in the early stages of America, it was get a farm, do the farm thing, go to the market, trade your milk for eggs, whatever, kind of the barter thing. Pay your taxes with money. That's when times you did actually need some money for your land tax or whatever. And then it just kept going. We kept having the technology upgrades in first farming. Farming was one that was so labor intensive. The one of the reasons why we got into a civil war is because of the plantations needing all that slave labor to manage all the tasks on a farm, whereas the North was sort of investigating more, technology solutions. And so after the Civil War, again, it keeps ramping up. We start getting more and more things done to the point now where not everything, but a lot of things are managed by some form of technology, whether it's some kind of mechanics picking things or cutting down the corn or whatever, or it's a petrochemical, so it's chemical pesticides, and that's a whole controversy by itself. But I mean, the automation up to the level of genetically manipulating stuff. And the scariest thing I think I ever heard on that was that we went from, we're now at 80% GMO, of things that we encounter. So it's kind of serious. We're unfortunately probably going to have a reckoning of that the way we did the Industrial Revolution that gave us pollution. So America kept benefiting from technology. If people couldn't work on the farm anymore, then they went and they worked in the factory. So there's an assumption for several generations that, yes, cool, technology, and what it'll do is you won't have the guy making buggy whips for the horse-drawn carriage. He's going to switch over and he's going to work on the assembly line and make a car for a horseless carriage. It's that constant. When we upgrade in technology, then generally speaking, the jobs just switch over to the new thing. But there was a recognition that not all jobs were going to do that. So as far back as Thomas Paine, that guy, back in the Revolutionary War era, was starting to talk about a basic income because not everybody, kind of at the time, land was favored to be the former land grants of the king, large plantation type things. The small farms really didn't kick in high until you get later with a little house on the prairie and the move west. But basically, because people lost the ability to own land or didn't have it to get it in the first place, then already he's saying, well, we're going to need to have some kind of stipend for the people who are not going to be landed, and at the time they couldn't even vote if they didn't have property. So he was thinking in that regard. Let's see, the next couple of people, it's quite a bit later. I don't know anything in between there, but quite a bit later, we had in the 60s, we had the last book that Martin Luther King wrote before he was killed. He wrote a book about a basic income because at that time people were really coming off the agricultural thing in earnest and coming to do factory jobs, and they needed to be like a cog in the wheel. So you might do a job, and then they lay off those guys because they upgraded technology, and then they need to have you be retrained to do a new job that, gapiosis is what I call it, gaps between jobs. Gapiosis between jobs, you needed to be retrained. So he thought, he and many people thought there needed to be some kind of stipend for when things are changing and adapting. And also, too, that would have been a way to also deal with the racial imbalances at the time, and just the inequality between the poor and the rich. But they didn't, of course, listen to him. And then a little bit later, somebody I actually know something about is Milton Friedman. I'm very different now, but in my earlier years, I was raised very conservative, and I went to a conservative college and actually saw Milton Friedman speaking at my college. My college was very steeped in republicanism and conservatism, and so they brought speakers in on those topics. And at the time, we had the beginning of the Reagan administration, and Milton Friedman was I don't know if you say the father of supply-side economics or Reaganomics, or sometimes known as trickle-down economics, the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats, etc. So the idea was,
right,
let's give tax incentives and deregulation to the corporations, and in turn they will invest in the economy and give jobs to everybody like Santa Claus, And that was an interesting theory. By the numbers long term, that's the beginning of wealth inequality right there, because that was good for a lot of people for a long time. That was cool, but it wasn't so great. We started getting an advancement of the welfare state and all of that, which Reagan and many people didn't want big government. They didn't want the welfare state, but heck, we had people left out of the party, that didn't get a piece of the pie, So what are we going to do? Then they wanted to bring it's complex to study this, but just to make it simple, capitalism, as I was taught, classic capitalism in the college I went to, is the, supply and demand is like the holy writ. It's supply and demand is that this rebalancing of supply and demand is good for everybody, except that what they did not say to us at the time was how much, there's a whole backstory there, because capitalism is not what we have. I don't know if we've ever had it. We've had a manipulation behind the scenes of a shadow group, witchcraft practitioners, who gave us this idea of supply and demand, but in actuality, and right after the 2008 turndown, there was an awful lot of writers writing about the manipulations of all kinds of markets, gold and silver, and investments, and all kinds of stuff, to where the rate, the interest rates, the bond yield rates, all of that stuff we've been discovering, thanks to some independent researchers off the hook, that there's been a manipulation. And the net result, so you take all the thing all together now, and it has created massive wealth inequality. And when I was a conservative, they were always saying, we don't want wealth distribution, like communism or socialism. And it's like, well, that's
right.
Not what we have. We have wealth distribution up. It doesn't go down from the, like communism says, for those who have to those who need. Instead, it's been trickling up, and now it's like a gusher here. And so the supply and demand thing is messed up because we have an imbalance. And the ways,
right.
Like one of the ways we can track the imbalance, the wealth inequality, so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and that's not a joke. It's like if you look at the economic numbers,
it really happens.
It's really happening, right? And so why everybody's freaking out about the GOP tax plan, or sometimes called #GOP tax scam, is that this is because the Republicans are driving the bus. And they have been benefited by supply-side economics massively, then they're going to drive this bus right over a fiscal cliff, because they just think they either know because they're cynical and not very nice guys, or they just believe this, is that if we just keep supplying the supply side, it will trickle down. The wealth will trickle down. Well, enter a whole new issue that I've aware of because I'm a technology person is technological unemployment, which is either robotics or unemployment. I mean, robotics or automation, excuse me.
Automation.
Yeah. Okay, so while we've been having a limping along economy since 2008, almost a decade now, by next year, October of next year would have been a decade, we've been having mass applied technology. So it's robotics, it's AI, it's automation of all kinds, and also work transfer. And I'll start with that one. Work transfer is when you take the work of an employee of the business and you transfer that work over to the customer. So today, I mean, just because I was in a hurry and philosophically maybe I should have done better, but here's what I did. I got in the scan and go line at the store. So instead of waiting for a count, because they choked it, they don't have as many people working, checking your groceries out as before.
That's what they do.
It's the holidays and everybody's crazy. So I said, they had a lot of scan and go lines available. And so I just went into the scan and go, and I scanned my own groceries, and I bagged my own groceries, and I, paid to do that, right? Paid to the nose to do that.
Right.
But, I mean, I know, based on my awareness, that when everyone doing that means that they can now use less employees because I'm scanning and going. In some parts of Europe and I believe Japan, they actually have employee-less stores. They have little convenience stores. You go in, there's nobody there. You go get the groceries that you have. I'm assuming everything is magnetically tagged so you don't run out. But you come through, you just do that. You scan and go, and it comes out of your debit automatically. You don't even wait for that part of it. So we're seeing, if you start to think about, so I lived in Washington at one point and used to travel to Oregon, and you cross the border, something magical happens from Washington to Oregon. Somebody's there to pump your gas because Oregon made it a law that the gas, for safety reasons and job protection, I think, too, you can't pump your own gas in Oregon. So there was a job protection situation there. So it's like I get out and get ready to, try not to get gas on my shoes. It's kind of a job. And this person runs out and, may I help you, ma'am? And it's like, it was kind of nice because that's like the olden days,
Wow.
when you didn't have to pump your own gas, right? But I mean, there you go. One side of the border, they'll help you, and there's a person working now as a result. On the other side of the border, the work transfer thing is now the ubiquitous choice. You don't even, occasionally you find a station that'll pump your gas, but not very many. So this work transfer is probably one of the biggest things that automation does. Then robotics is probably more common in factories than it is, in everyday life. But robotics would be, the Japanese started the whole thing where they found out robots could rivet a car a lot faster and for 24/7, unless it breaks down and then, it's back up. I mean, it never needed a coffee break. It didn't need a salary. It didn't need health care,
Right.
And do it faster, right? So we have had a massive automation.
Robotics is changing so rapidly, and it's taking over everywhere. So, and they're humanizing it, and they have you ever watched Sophia and Hanson Robotics? And they're ironically they're out in Japan. They're out in Japan. They're American, but they moved there, I guess, because they could do things faster or cheaper or something. But anyway, they're taking over the world. The AI is. I've been watching Sophia, and in the last 3 or 4 months, she's learning because everything is in the cloud. So they've mass-produced these robots. The robots, whatever they learn, it goes into the cloud. They're automatically fed back to all the other robots. And we're talking about robots, not just the ones that are walking around or talking to people, but the bots are in your computers. The AI is everywhere, and it's learning exponentially every day. And meanwhile, humans, we learn very slowly. It takes generations for us to get this information that they're getting in a year's time. So the writing's on the wall. They're going to take over. We created them. But the same thing happened with the Anunnaki. the Anunnaki created us, and then soon we were surpassing them. And, of course, they went in there and they dumbing us down, and they turned off 256 strands of DNA, so we couldn't quite take over the gods, so to speak. So we've got to start viewing in the world differently, not in terms of jobs. So I forget the man's name, I'll pull that up, who works for Hanson. He's become the spokesperson. And he says, we've got to start thinking in terms of the goal of life is not about a job, but it's about doing things where you feel good about yourself, you enjoy doing. You could contribute to society, but the bottom line is having a good life. So in more advanced civilizations, they don't have people pumping gas. Of course, that'd be so primitive. It's like
we don't have gas.
They don't have gas. Right. Yeah, so these things that we think are life bred, here in Maui, they wanted to have this sugarcane production going on that was over 100-year-old industry, and so every once in a while they would burn a whole field and they would pollute the field, and they had plastic watering systems, and this toxins would go out. And I have friends that were dropping over dead. They catch cancer and be dead in 3 months. And it's like, die, get rid of it. It's killing people. But no, we finally got rid of it. But it took this activism of the entire island for years and years and years and years, showing up in council. So we're at the same crux. We've got to start thinking outside of this box of, I'm going to work this job in a factory or a job to moving towards careers, or even shifting. Like maybe I'll be, a CEO for 5 years, but then I'll go be an artist on a beach in Jamaica for the next 5. Just doing what fulfills your soul, and by doing what is fulfilling,
that's I think where we're. I think we need to head that way. It's not a bad thing to have automation. Of course, it should be responsible, of course, but it's not a bad thing that's happening if a lot of people in a factory were getting injured or killed, and now you got a robot doing it, and it gets broken, it can be fixed. That's not a bad thing in and of itself. It's just that we haven't actually upgraded provisioning humans, and I say that because it separates the idea of having humans be supplied for and money. So when you provision, like how are we being provisioned? How are we taking care of our needs? And I'm a very pro, you stand, around 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about the basic income. I'm pro the basic income, but I want to stress that I see the basic income as kind of like giving blood to the gunshot wound victim before you sew him up, take out the bullet and sew him up. I mean, it's a step in a process of us figuring out how to provide for human life with all these changes rapidly enough to keep up. And this is why, and the tax plan, I want to tell everybody, please contact your representatives as being voted on Tuesday, and it is exactly the wrong thing to do for everyone, because what's going to happen is the basic gist is massive tax cuts for the wealthy, tax loopholes not loopholes, but deductions and whatnot being cut for middle class, and then that's going to drive up the deficit, and then this administration and this Congress is going to then use that to cut benefits with absolutely no jobs program, and I mean, or work program or any other provisioning plan whatsoever. I mean, they didn't even do that in the primitive 30s when we had the big crash. They eventually had to come up with programs so people could live, And we're literally in some parts of the country, and if you think I'm all wet, just go look at the basicincome.org and look at the discussion of things like hookworm disease. They're getting raw sewage and all kinds of horrifying stuff in rural areas of the South, and people are getting a disease that was almost eradicated 100 years ago. You know what I mean? And it's like,
wow.
We have the capital of the demand side, and this is what I talk about to people. So you got supply side. You keep giving them money. Guess what they do? We found out what they do. They hoard it in bank accounts. They take it offshore in massive quantities. If anyone wants to look at the Paradise Papers, it's like frozen. It's like frozen wealth. And one thing that you got to think of money and wealth is that it is a utility for everyone to be provided for. It's not a plaything for rich people. It's not play money for one class. It's how we provision everyone is money. It's a utility.
Right.
It's not supposed to be a private purview because, that's back to being an oligarchy or kings and queens and princes.
Well, that is the oligarchy.
Right, and it results in human trafficking at all levels. Human trafficking is based on one premise, and that is that you have a large group of people that cannot say no to anything. They cannot say no to bad working conditions. They can't say no to cuts to their job and benefits. They can't say no to the boss that's all handsy, because we've been getting a lot of that with the Me Too movement. They can't say no if they're so poor and they have children and mouths to feed to someone wanting to buy their kid, which happens not just in third world countries. They can't say no to slavery in its actual form, like it's coming back like a bad penny, real slavery, and people working for nothing, and interfamily slavery, where people who don't have a job are having to, there's some hidden slavery in there where people are not provisioned adequately, and they have food insecurity within their own home. They're the last in the pecking order who gets to eat. I mean, it's nasty, okay? As well as social problems with how, addiction issues and all the social ills go up in this environment. I mean, what's being done to us at pretty much every social ill just is having to do with the fact that we're getting this squeeze on us more and more and more. People are having a horrible time trying to make a rational, mature plan of, investing. Do I buy a home? Do I not buy a home? Do I go to school? Do I not go to school? We have a young person in our home, and lots of people have said don't go to school, and if you go to school, do not get any kind of loan, because of the student loan return on investment has not been there. People are graduating with degrees, and they have student debt, and they cannot get work commensurate with what it was that they wanted to do, and they can't retrain, and it's just, we're in, there's a book called Freakonomics. We're definitely in Freakonomics. It's really, really hard to tell what is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to tell the oligarch class no. And to immediately change the game with a basic income, because what the basic income does is you can give those guys money all day long. They can start a business all day long, but if nobody can buy their stuff, if there's no customers, if all of us can only pay for if all we can pay for is basics and we have no discretionary income, everybody's job, because if they've automated all the basics, everybody's job is in the discretionary income, the part left over after you paid for food, clothing, housing, your utilities, and all that. What's left is your Starbucks money. Well, dang, if you don't have that, if they squeeze you that hard, there's not even going to be that. And that's where somebody's job is now, because we have a service economy. So the basic income will help everybody, and it's hard to understand how this works unless you study it. But basically, it is a universal, unconditional basic income, and there's really good reasons why it needs to be that way. Universal, everybody gets it. A lot of people are against that if somebody rich gets it. Well, numerically, there's very few of those. And they could do a goodwill thing and give that away. But my great-grandfather lost everything in the Depression, went from a mansion to living under a bridge. I think a universal basic income would have helped him out a lot, At that point, people are losing their jobs. Houston and a bunch of cities got wiped out. Puerto Rico has all got wiped out by storms. Even if you were doing really well before that storm, you're not doing so well now. So an unconditional basic income is for of course, people who don't have a job or looking or trying to retrain or all those things. But it's also for a middle-class person who just can't quite, work enough to get what they need. And, people for every kind of turn down you can imagine. So that's the unconditionality of it. And then the unconditionality, I forgot the other point. There was two things. So go ahead, Janet. I'll think of it in a minute.
Oh, goodness. Let me think what you were... Well, yeah, you were talking about how you can you can be at the top of the food chain, and suddenly there's something like the Depression of the 1930s, and or like the hurricane. But see, some of those people are just so rich that doesn't even affect them because they're ready to rebuild, and they get profit from rebuilding all this stuff that's
but who's going to buy their stuff? If they had a store and they were doing really well, and their town gets wiped out, who's going to buy it in the town?
They'll always move to something that is. They'll move to something that people can't live without, which is food.
Right.
That type of thing.
Well, that's good.
So the luxuries go away, and it goes down to the basic needs. But if you look outside of this box that we have, this one that's kind of obvious and viewable, there's the whole story about they're trying to wipe out humanity to a lower population, down to 500 million or whatever. So what is that called? The depopulation bomb. So is there a depopulation agenda? They're basically the strategies that they're imposing upon the world leave people starving to death or without the basic medical that allows them to live. So how many people are going to die from these new policies?
I'll tell you one thing I've been tracking. Or are they going to sweep
it under the carpet? Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so that's the really difficult thing to look at is the intentionality. This is being done on purpose by this class who, if most of what they can get is robotics or whatever, what do they need us for, and that they feel like the depopulation agenda, what's that? What are these things that sound good, like on the outside, and then but you find out there's a sinister intention, So, for instance, one thing I've been tracking, of course, what happens in Europe often then happens here. What has happened in Britain, I'm not ashamed to say I'm on disability after being a caregiver. I got hurt, and so I'm on disability. And they have been in England. Basically, they have someone who's disabled, who's been out of the workforce for a while, and they're just basically arbitrarily declaring them fit to work. And there's no jobs, and of course they had no training, and they're probably not well, so they're losing their housing, their medication, there's just a whole support structure. And it's so bad, there's literal thousands of suicides going on because people come home from their meeting, they're declared fit to work, they have they're immediately cut off from services, they're literally suiciding, I mean, that's when you get down to certain levels,
perhaps.
Yeah, you get to certain levels of despair, and lack of hope, and young people who can't get started on a life, and they have all these older generations telling the younger generations, why can't you get your act together? It's like, if you kind of walk in their shoes a little bit, it's really hard to get going. And now you have these traps, like the student loan trap or the minimum wage trap. You cannot work a minimum wage in any state of the United States full-time, if you can get full-time work, because they figured out how to cut benefits from people by not giving them full-time work, and get a two-bedroom apartment. You've got to look at the reality of this, not what you think, not what you've heard, not what your people's ideas of it, but what people are actually going through. And most of the time, because of the psyop of all of us, that it's our fault. We've got this idea that Americans are pull yourself up by your bootstrap people, but a real community is always interdependent. And my partner Brett says somebody has to say yes to you for you to participate. You can't have a marginalization for whatever reason. You're young, you're old, you're female, you're a person of color, LGBT, whatever excuse that they can give to say no to you, with dwindling jobs, dwindling prospects, and the squeeze, they're going to do it. So all the discrimination things have come back in that we thought we were getting rid of. So as this thing continues to deteriorate, you have the social mores and the ideals that we want to live by being challenged by basically the poverty quotient. And one word they use that I love because it describes it well. In the basic income movement, it was coined by a guy, a researcher, really great researcher. His name is Guy Standing, just like the last guy standing. That is his real name in Britain.
Wow.
Yeah, that's his name. It's easy to remember. He wrote a book. Yeah, he coined the term precariat. So it's people who are living precariously, which is probably most of us, to where an illness, some kind of an accident, job turned down, all these things would put us right into the edge of existence. I mean, you could drop all the way down to homelessness very quickly. So that precariousness, you can't make it long. When we talk about an economy jumping, the two things they measure is housing, used to measure was housing, and automobiles being sold and goods being sold. Anything that requires timed payments, it's really hard to think in terms of investing in if you're saddled with a monthly payment and you don't know if your job is very secure. So now your decisions are being driven by this insecurity and being in the precariat.
Right. Well, I've done that. I can't do what I want to do. I can't pick up and just move across the planet. I can't do this because I have bills. I have responsibility. I've put all my eggs in this basket, and I bought a house in this part of the world, and now the house isn't worth anything, and I don't have a job. So we're always, it's like the hamster, the wheel in the hamster cage. We never get ahead unless and I was married to a wealthy man, and his family was wealthy. And they had a lot of this attitude. Now, I don't know how high up this food chain, how wealthy they were, but they seem to be, way above everybody else in terms of
what you're seeing kind of is a weird,
income.
If you look at this income inequality chart and graph, it's a really weird-looking chart because the inequality goes like it's just kind of, there's a sort of a stasis between the rich and the poor, I guess you'd say, and the middle class and all that. And then it just sharply turns up. So unless you are in, it goes like this. In the Occupy movement, they said, we are the 99%. So if you're not a 1%er, okay, you might have been wealthy like an upper middle class person or maybe lower wealth class, 20 years ago or whatever. But if you're at this juncture, you're unless you're in the 1% category, which is very few of us, I don't know anybody in that category, unless you're in that category where you have the lift up from the way that you don't have the squeeze, you have the opposite. Your boat is being lifted up by the tide. And trust me, I lived on a boat. The rising tide does not lift all boats. If the boat is chained down, it sinks that boat. So just saying. But
wow.
Yeah, it's true. I've seen it happen. The thing is if you're not in a certain, and I don't know what that number is, but a certain income category, you might have thought yourself wealthy and all, but you're not really because you weren't wealthy enough to be in the club, so to speak, of the people who are benefiting by this system as it's been developed. And then if you're the 0.1%, okay, it's a really, really small percentage of people, it's just absolutely a rocket to the moon. The graph goes way, 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 way up off the page, where the 0.1% are even doing better than the 1% are doing. And this is just not, this is not the recipe for world democracy, for peace, for equality, for social progress at all. This is, I think I said to you, and I don't know if I said it on the show already, but we've had, in 2 years, I've watched this little statistic of it was 80 people owned half, individual people. 80 people owned half the world's wealth 2 years ago. Then it was 60. Now it's 8. So there's 8 people walking around the planet who own half the world's wealth, and probably before the end of 2018, because it's some kind of contest between them, like the Highlander, there can only be one, right? Right? There's going to be one person who owns half the world's wealth, and it's going to either be like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or one of those guys. George Soros, I don't know if he's on the list, but so that's the caliber of people we're talking about. And they're basically going to be the emperor of the world, the emperor of the planet, because if they own half the world's wealth, they win, right?
Right. It's kind of hilarious when you think about it. Like, who needs that much? Who wants? It doesn't even sound logical or human. It sounds like something out of a bad B movie, but like another species. Like, who needs that much? It's like a mental illness. Who needs that much wealth? All for
I
themselves?
think it's bragging rights at one. Because those people, they don't need money. They don't have enough lifetime to spend it all. I think at that point, that's your top people that think of the rest of us as their property. So they're buying and selling people. If they want you dead, you're dead. If they want to kill your country, they'll kill your country. I mean, we're talking the power, the power trip over individuals and even countries. And then I think it's bragging rights at that point, because there'll be one guy who stands up one day, I'm the king of the world. It's like he's the guy. He's the man. Everyone has to bow to him.
He's it. But
this is, basically creating the new Roman Empire with Julius Caesar. It's kind of this repeat of this oligarchy plan that is, just look at history. It's not pretty at all.
No, it's not. Oh, boy. Well, are there any solutions? Is there any way out of this? What can we do to elevate consciousness so this doesn't happen? How can we wake up the world? Shake them, wake them, wake up.
Oh yeah, I always like to follow up with that. Well, okay, so
hold on one second.
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on one second. My friend is here, Joy, and I'm going to put the speaker on and let her. She's been popping in and out. I think she's having trouble holding the signal, but let's see what she wants to say to add to the discussion. She's not going to be able to stay with us long, so welcome. Let's see, Joy. Welcome, Joy, to our show. Hi. Were you able to listen to any of it? I saw you coming and going. Maybe you were losing the signal. But
I was listening, and I love to talk solutions. I think that we have solutions in several areas. First, this is such a timely conversation, given that we just had an Alabama election where 98% of the black women got out and voted, no matter what condition they were in, rich or poor, and they were probably mostly poor. And they made a huge difference in uplifting not just their own lives personally, but also in their state and the United States, and therefore the world. And so I think that one of our first areas of solution is we can open our hearts and know that we can do a simple thing like call our congressman, call our senator regarding the tax bill and any other area of our human condition. And we can do that with an open heart and with a positive attitude, with the intention of having a very, very positive result that makes a difference around the world. So just a simple phone conversation, but if they have the energy to get into their congressman's office, go visit the guy and bring a placard, So there's that. There's even, of course, good old prayer and meditation and putting ourselves in a state of unity, higher awareness consciousness, bringing love into our own personal space and then radiating that out and sending it out to the world with prayer confirmation. And at the same time, something that works because our brains were built for it is to visualize an end product, an end scenario that you would like to see rather than focusing completely on the problem, visualizing a fantastic dream come true and see it as if you are in the future and you're looking around you and it's already done. It's already happened. Because our visualizations and our intentions and our open-heartedness make all the difference in the world.
And I agree, and it's hard to put that down into words for some people who are so driven by their minds. So we have to give people the logic of how and why it works, and it really does. It applies all the way to quantum physics. Our ability to imagine an image, it's like magic, and we're able to create by our visualizations, just as if we had taken the plans and then we decided to build something from the plans. We can skip those steps in between and create it because we're feeding into the morphogenic field. We're feeding into the grid. Now, we're going to be running out of time here. I want to ask you to negotiate with you and Karen. Do you want to go another 15 minutes or another half hour? Because otherwise we're going to be running out of time at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay,
Certainly.
we're going to continue then. Okay, so this is why I love having panels of women. Could you tell Karen, Joy, could you tell Karen and our listeners a little bit about yourself, not a long thing, but who are you and what you've done? Because you basically have done something that changed the world and changed people. So what we're trying to convey to people is that any of us can be effective. So the 98% of the black women, they probably in some level thought, what can we do? But they did it, and they changed the world. They did something good for the whole planet. So tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what did you do? And you're still alive and still doing it, but what was the thing you did that basically affected the world?
Well, I'm happy to share that with you. I just had one more thought that we can talk more about, and that is that
Go ahead.
Because of the public conversation about sexual abuse right now, because all of that is coming out into a public conversation, it is a strange back door to empowering women to come out and be leaders. I mean, it's not the route that we might have picked. Oh, I think we'll discuss sexual abuse, and then I can take my leadership role as a female, But that's what has happened. It is one of the diseases in our society that is coming up, and it's like it's like detoxing now. And so we have to listen to it with wonderful compassion and really, really good understanding, and want to look at what we can do to further the feminine all around the planet, the woman that we are, born into female bodies, but just the feminine principle, which is automatically fills the world with love and compassion and kindness and understanding and generosity, because we're mommies. That's what the feminine principle is. So this is an amazing time that is right here, right now. It's this week. It's this month. And so it's one of the greatest gifts that we can start utilizing and take advantage of. My background has been to grow up as a very empowered little girl. I was very, very intuitive and conscious, even as a 3- and 4-year-old, and started seeing things beyond the third dimension even when I was 12. In other words, I was very psychic and intuitive. And then as I became an adult, I was in the computer industry, being a very left-brain computer scientist engineer designing software, and was very much in the male corporate America world. But I always brought that feminine principle that I just told you is one of our strongest strengths, our strongest skills, is to be a wonderful, wonderful giving woman. And so throughout my corporate experience, I was always bringing the feminine principle in. And then I have also left the corporate world and started a nonprofit organization where I went around the world and interviewed top world leaders who I felt were exemplary and as enlightened as possible. This was throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s, and even up until 2013 or 14. And amongst the people are famous people like Bill Gates and Lee Iacocca and Jack Welch, who all ran these huge corporations and were amongst the wealthiest people on the planet, and but also those who are running the largest charitable organizations in the world. And I have written a best-selling book entitled 21st Century Leadership. In all of my interactions, my main goal and vision was to walk into these powerful people's space and really reflect back to them that they were wealthy and they needed to do good with their wealth and they needed to pay it forward and they needed to give back 25, 30, 40% of their wealth to their communities and to build a better nation and better world. So I've done a lot of corporate leadership consulting around spreading the wealth out and building charities, and I've helped raise hundreds of millions of dollars for charities around the country. And I've also just helped thousands of individuals live their vision, live their highest vision, live what they came here to do, and then most especially lift up their spiritual enlightenment and consciousness. Open that up, live in love and joy each and every day, live a healthy life, and give back.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a good background and some topics to discuss. Back to you, Karen.
Oh, no, I was just really interested and glad to hear it, and I'm glad that it is people at this level, or someone is talking to them. I think it's interesting the high-tech field has actually been the forefront support of a basic income guarantee, and so there has been statements by quite a few leaders, Mark Zuckerberg and I don't know about Bill Gates, but I was trying to think of who else. Sir Richard Branson of the Virgin Mobile Company. There's different Virgin everything, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why they've spoken to that is because their industry does live in the discretionary spending. In terms of like the cell phone is after food, clothing, housing. There's kind of a realization that the industry they're in is supported by consumers who want to make that investment or whatever they have left in one of their products. So I think that's just sensible on their part. And then also, of course, they are well understanding the technological changes that are afoot that is going to change really how we think of work. And what I tell people is that work is going to be different from my work is I go to the job and I make my income and then that's how I pay for everything, to as we go further into this concept of reaping the inventor's dividend. And my great-grandfather was an inventor, so we reaped a benefit societally for the things that he invented. And so we're getting an accumulation of these inventors' dividends to become a citizen's dividend. And once that happens, your work changes to what did I come here for? Like you said, like what was my work? Like you go to an artist and you say, I love your work. It's a fundamental change in how we live. Potentially going to the Star Trek universe that you and I talk about all the time, Janet, where we transcended physicality because we've gotten more and more into virtuality and technology that makes things and all these innovations coming along. why don't we make that transition smoother? And I try to explain it. It's kind of the basic income. When I talk to people who are very forward thinking, I say, look, this is a ladder. A ladder of understanding. We have a scarcity mindedness in our current economy to an extreme level. So we're actually manufacturing scarcity. I always tell my toaster story. I've had way too many toasters because they break down and I can't get parts to fix them because we have a disposable society. Well, that's, of course, environmentally irresponsible and physically irresponsible at some level. So it's kind of a thing where why don't we go towards abundance and make things to last better or can be repaired or can be recycled and all these things. And that's a first level. Let's stop being scarcity-minded, and then let's make that a reward to become abundance-minded. And as we go up the ladder of realizing that money is just our belief in it, which is really strongly being shown by cryptocurrency because it's not based on gold or silver or assets. It's based on math. So we have a bunch of numbers that were generated by computers. So now we realize, it's our belief in it that makes it valuable. And then, valuing each other, valuing the planet. And it's a ladder of realization that I think many forces for the good have put us on to kind of climb out of a scarcity mindset, a limitations mindset, a negative mindset. This is actually the beginning of really great things for humanity, is to take these different tools and pull ourselves up to a really different level of awareness. And I know our contactees, our guide friends, our ET friends, and are telling us is that we could be at a different level. And we need to realize that if there is a scarcity mindedness, if there is a vast conspiracy, that we are participating in it. We can say no. And I love that you brought up the election, where people who have been marginalized just said, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to speak my mind. If we all do that in whatever capacity we can to vote for a positive vision, like you were saying, yes. The basic income and all of these tools are the tools for it, but it's the mindset that is what comes first.
Back to you, Joy.
Yes, I think that is very, very beautifully said. And, it's up to each and every one of us to, I was thinking about this all last week, as a matter of fact, to be ready to receive all of the possible resources that we can as an individual, because we might not even see what resources we need. We don't need a surplus. If we do get a surplus, we can give it away. But just to even envision that we have all the resources we need to be in service, to be making a difference, to be living our vision, to be living our highest and fulfilling our highest purpose, which is really being a positive, giving, loving, compassionate force on the planet, and to be connected with as high a consciousness and as harmonious and peaceful and balanced a consciousness as possible. And one of the things that I was reminded of the other evening is we don't want to stay too much in the polarity of rich and poor, dark and good, and dark and light, but to lift ourselves up many times a day into that unity, higher consciousness and awareness, where we're not seeing the polarity, but we're simply maybe viewing things through God's eyes, if I can say it, through the highest possible viewpoint. And through those eyes, we're seeing love, we're seeing growth, we're seeing evolution, we're seeing quantum leaps, we're seeing even silly old cartoon President Trump. I see him as a cartoon because he's absurd. We are even seeing that he has an amazingly important purpose right now to wake us up, get us up off our duff, get us out of apathy and doing stuff. And because who knows how much time we'll have left, you know? So
right.
I think that, you know, it's very, very important to be balancing our highest awareness, that unity consciousness, holding that, opening our hearts with love, and then doing whatever we possibly can do each day.
Right on. Yeah, so I think that, you know, my husband at the party said about the polarity that we need to embrace the dark side and, let's turn this off, shoot. Sorry about that. And realize that we created this continuum, this polarity for a divine purpose. And I think we touched on this earlier, that these things that are perceived as negatives are catalysts. So we have right now the sexual abuse that's going on, and I'm one of the people that can say, me too. I'm not going to go into it here, but I've got my story, and I know as a therapist, a counselor, and I have people on my couch, and they come to me, and it's not only this life, but in past lives, we have been victims and victimizers. And, you know, there are little boys that get abused too, but the abuse of women has been for thousands of years. I was talking to Sasha, and I says, you know, we're not even, we don't really have equal rights now. As a child, I went through watching the women's movement, and what was her name? Who led the movement in the 60s? Gloria Steinem and all those people that were a little bit older than me, and they were leading the way. And we gradually got more and more rights. As a child, my girlfriends that were older than me, they would get pregnant. They couldn't get abortions. And here you had children raising children. They were not equipped to do that. Their parents were exhausted having raised them. It's like, oh no, I've got to help raise this, you know, infant. And we need to start doing things differently and consciously. The abuse, there was a lot of sexual abuse in my neighborhood. That there's something going wrong with our culture. Our culture is repressing our sexuality to a huge degree that it comes out sideways and back ass and full of perpetrators, and a lot of them just go, what? You know, like, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm just being a man. And that's part of what Trump said. Oh, that's just what men do. We have locker room discussions. You know, they just dehumanize women and make them objects, and don't even perceive us as souls that are in bodies, and that their next time they could be female. There's just no balance there. And that's, I think, is the core of the major dysfunction of this whole planet, is the imbalance between the masculine and the feminine. And now they realize that we have more than two genders. We have XXY and XYY and so on and so forth. It's like a Klein. So, you know, a lot of confusion around sexual identity and gender identification. And we need to see these as the avatars that we chose. And everybody's beautiful, whether you're, you know, whole or deformed, missing parts or whatever. It doesn't matter. These are the vehicles that we're in to have these things called lifetimes and the human experience. And we all deserve to be honored, respected, adored, loved, you know, have a conscious, civilized civilization that meets the basic needs of everybody who was invited in some way to come down to this planet and join this civilization, the human civilization. So anyway, we've got a lot to discuss, and this is just the beginning of this discussion, and I know we can keep going, but my poor dad, I don't know what happened to him, but he and his brothers were basically predators, sexual predators. And I had to deal with that, and I learned to run from it, and I learned to have some conversations that saved my butt from having, you know, major rape. But that was epidemic in my so-called Christian, leave it to beer society that I was raised in. Sexual abuse was everywhere, sexual predators everywhere. And it was shocking. And as I look back on it, now that the Me Too movement started, it just brings me into tears, absolute tears, and compassion and forgiveness for everybody in this vicious cycle. So back to somebody. Who wants it?
I'd like to say
Karen?
Yeah.
Okay,
well, okay, so that's that having a very long-standing situation where a good large chunk of the population, if you say women are 50%, so then 50% at least of the population cannot say no to absolutely anything that's done to them or asked of them or foisted on them. And that is economic disempowerment. And when you lift yourself up, and I totally agree. I've had great precarious seasons of my life, and including a stint of being category homeless because of domestic violence with children, with one child in a wheelchair. So, man, it's just like on the edge. I have had to work on that upliftment of myself and working through and getting myself kind of stabilized, Didn't much have a choice for the sake of myself and my children. But then the other thing is to lift each other up, and that is the social justice aspect. We've got to listen to people when they're talking about how difficult it is to be in a food desert or to be a single parent or et cetera, et cetera. There's many, many life circumstances. I was a caregiver for a long time, so many life circumstances that are just absolutely, mentally crushing unto despair. So when you lift yourself up, lift somebody else too in the social justice aspect, and recognize what this imbalance is doing, and look at the difficulty square in the eye, and to say, okay, we can do something about it. We can decide that this is not acceptable. It's not just. We've got to look at what it is, and then again, look for solutions, but like permanent solutions. So what I've said to people in the Me Too, and by the way, Me Too, is to say that these are not, part of the reason why this is got to be addressed is these are not one bad apple problems. Like there's just that one guy at work, or one bad apple that caused the problem. It's endemic. It's built in. It's built into the culture of work. Our work environments have not been great, especially for women. Been brutal to people as far as safety issues. My dad was a safety officer at a power plant. We had the union movement try to lift up the state of the worker. But our work environments and our family environments and church and politics and all of that has accepted a level we're not happy with and isn't right, and is in fact abusive and is against any notion of human rights. What we're saying is we've really got to lift up all those boats. We've got to start envisioning what could society be like, how would it need to be in order for this to be better. But first we have to definitely say it's not acceptable now. And I do believe women coming into not being property anymore and being traded for a goat or two goats or a sheep and a cow and a chicken. I think we do have a sense of ourselves as individuals. We can thank our foremothers for fighting for the right to vote, for fighting for women's rights, but it's kind of like this giant, computer question. Are you sure that's what you want? Yes, we are sure. And, it seems to me like any activist of any stripe with this administration and this blowback from some unhappy people is being asked, to jump back in the fray. Don't make an assumption that we've got these rights. We've got to fight for them yet again and push that acceptability level even higher than it was before, and get people out of the despair zone, because despair is the big thing that we are fighting when we're struggling so much for basics, when we see all this negativity coming out. But in a weird sort of way, it's better, because this stuff was underground and unsaid and unspoken for so long. before it gets better, it's kind of going to get messy, I think. So it's pick something and do have that vision and work and lift yourself up and lift others up too. And I think we're going to get through this. It's sort of like the teenager stage of. I had 3 teenagers at the same time. I called it the kamikaze age. It was like my boys in their 20s. They came over to my house and told me all the shenanigans they got into that I didn't know about, and my hair turned white while I was cooking dinner that day. But it's kind of like we're going through that, and eventually you get a responsible young adult if all goes well. And our society is going to need to grow past this even our top leadership being so infantile and so juvenile. We've got to, I think we'll have a leadership that matches the level that we achieve and that we believe in and that we go for.
Joy, your turn. You there? Oh, I guess Joy's. No, Joy, are you there? Hello? Am I there?
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
I can.
Joy.
Can you guys?
There you are.
Okay.
I can hear you. Go ahead, Joy. Your turn.
So besides the 100 things I'd love to say right now, I want to say that the good news is that we have more women in leadership positions than we have ever had. We have more women in, yes, power positions and financial power positions than we've ever had. And that could be part of our solution is to join them and, into a juggernaut movement that is third dimensional and effective. Because there's plenty of wonderful women's charities and women's service organizations, and there's 20,000 plus women running for office already, getting ready to run in office in 2018. So there's all these wonderful physical things as well as our counseling coaching practice where we're helping people one-on-one and in small and large groups. I think that very importantly, because we were raised on very masculine-oriented spiritual systems such as Christianity or Judaism, or all of our Western religions are masculine-based, and they disempowered women. So we have to also make sure that we have our own spirituality and our own spiritual system, if you will, our own religion that empowers the feminine and empowers women, and go into our activities with as much open consciousness as possible, with as much forgiveness and compassion as we possibly can muster, because if we simply are trying to fight against and all we do is focus on the crap, then we're just going to get more of that. So if we'll focus on the higher ideals and the higher resonating energies and the higher consciousness, and yes, our very own personal higher spiritual system that empowers us, that's when your actions really, really make a fantastically wonderful difference. You're not creating more of the polarity.
So could you lead us into some kind of, we have a few minutes left, some kind of higher elevated, like a meditation or something that'll lift us out of this? Because, we have the tendency, and I think we do need to cathartic a bit because it's been repressed for so long. But it is lovely to end on a high note. So
absolutely.
We have about 8 minutes left. Karen, are you okay with Joy leading us in a little small meditation to kind of pull us out of this quagmire? Okay, go ahead.
I want to say to definitely go back to the website, aquarianradio.com, and look at the links that I know Janet's going to have there for further information. But, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And we can make this a trio meditation. It doesn't have to be just my words. But given everything that has been shared today, and given that there's plenty of things to work on. If we will create a sphere of loving energy all around our bodies right now and be that beautiful sphere of loving energy, add in joy and peace and harmony, and just surround yourself physically and non-physically with love that is unconditional and is part of the unity, higher awareness, the all-knowing, the infinite source. And we share this beautiful sphere of light. We expand it out to include our homes, expand it out to our neighborhoods, include the entire neighborhood, include the entire community with this beautiful, loving sphere. It's an all-healing sphere of light and love. And now we're on the island of Maui, so we would include all of Maui, but it can be the whole urban area, the whole state we're in, United States, the planet Earth. We can be the astronauts and the angelic force that surrounds all of Earth in a beautiful, loving, gorgeous light. And let us know in our minds that we have highest wisdom for understanding. We have the highest, purest knowing so that we can understand all of the various problems and activities and strange things that occur on our planet. We can know these by instantaneously being very still, breathing deep, and bringing in this love light that is actually our very essence. This love light is who we are. So when we are present in a beautiful sphere of joyous, loving, kind compassion, we are being our more truthful whole self. And this is our greatest gift to ourselves. This is our greatest gift to our lives. This is our greatest gift to humanity, as well as whatever other civilizations are surrounding us. I believe that our beautiful ET civilizations are wanting us to lift up and out of the quagmire. And the most powerful way to do that is through love and joy and kindness and generosity of heart. And when we are in that space of so much love and understanding, there isn't even anything that needs to be forgiven or healed. It just automatically takes place. From this space, from this state of our natural being, we can envision a humanity where everyone is healthy, happy, contributing, comfortable, have plenty of abundance for living their dreams. They are living their dreams and visions. It's harmonious, and we are learning our greatest wisdom. We are constantly evolving. Ah, sister.
Ah, sister. Well, we're out of time, so thank you so much for listening. Karen, final words. Joy, final words.
Well, I just say people check out the basic income. I think there's so much stuff in the news that is to be hopeful for, definitely. Pick something and contribute your energy to it. And, it's better than kind of worrying or being afraid or upset or angry. Is throw your shoulder behind something and do something, because the action is so important. And I think women are really good at that. So that would be my final thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, final thoughts?
Just everything you just said. Because when we bring when you bring it all back down, it is our actions and our intentions behind the actions.
Oh, yes. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is just the beginning. We are going to continue the dialogue. I encourage you to go out and have the discussions. And if you find yourself getting angry, upset, just go somewhere, express it to yourself, talk to the tree, to the wall, to the sky, to the ground, and then come back with that same energy and rechannel it through your heart chakra and say it again. And take that energy to your neighbor, through your heart chakra, to your sisters, to the men in your lives. And remember with love and compassion that this is a design created for us all so we could grow, evolve, become conscious in the cosmos. And I'm done for now. Thank you so much for listening. Much love and blessings. And aloha. Let me get some exit music. Karen, you were playing some beautiful music, but I'm going to go get something else. Oh, goodness. Where is it? Oh, right. Nothing works. Here it goes. Oh, sorry about that. I was spaced out. Here we go. Thank you very much. Love and blessings. Aloha.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.